I remembered that they moved it, but then where did they put it? So thank you for joining me. I'm Nola Simon. I'm the host of the Hybrid Remote Center of Excellence. And today we've got Meagan Williamson. She's a Pinterest expert. Is that how you
That's
describe yourself?
right. Yes, I jokingly or lovingly call myself a seasoned Pinterest marketing expert because I've been doing it so long, although then that leads into what exactly does that mean? But yeah, I'm a experienced Pinterest marketing expert and really a coach and a educator in the space.
Exactly. That's right. And I was drawn to you because I really find that you're really adapting to the tools that exist right now. Like you've done a lot of work with
Mm,
AI, you're developing that. And also the way that you're encouraging people to repurpose their content from other platforms and really focusing on how that can really benefit their mental health. I really feel is really insightful. And I wanted to talk to you about that. And
yeah.
this month, you're actually got a challenge going on. So it's a perfect month for us to be talking about this because
Yeah.
Megan's got this challenge that I just signed up for personally and it starts what, the 23rd?
Yeah, we kick off September 23rd. And if you miss it, if you're hearing this later, I do run it. My goal is to run it 3 times a year, but generally I run it at least 2 times. But hopefully it's happened this year. It's been 3 times that I've run it. So we're hoping to keep that up.
That's great. That's great. So tell me a little bit about your background because Megan is also one of the first people I've really invited to the podcast from Threads. So we've chatted on Threads here and there, but I don't necessarily know everything about your background. So what is it you
Sure.
normally like people to know about how you started and
Yeah. Do you want the short or the long version? No.
the
Well,
fun
you and I
version?
both know. Yeah, the could chat for days version. No,
Yeah.
I'll give you the Coles Notes version, which is essentially so my background is actually in educational and clinical psychology. I was a trained school psychologist in Canada,
Oh,
worked
right.
in
Yeah.
that career for 10 years. I also got recognized and licensed in the United Kingdom. So I was an educational psychologist while I lived overseas. And during all that time, even though my day job, I was assessing kids and working in school boards, doing psych consultations and working in a pediatric hospital. Before that, I, on the side, had a love of blogging and social media content creation and fell into using Pinterest for my blog. And so I really started working online in 2010 when I went to live abroad. Nobody would hire me as an educational psychologist because I had been trained in Canada, not the United Kingdom, and they didn't really know what to do with me. And I'm a doer. I like to stay busy. I love learning. And so I taught myself how to create a website. I started blogging about my adventures living in Northern Ireland as a Canadian. And the rest was history. I signed up to Pinterest in the very early days and I was just good at it. It clicked with me. Just funny because actually, before we started recording, we were talking about Pinterest and social media and this idea of being highly conscious of the effects of social media in terms of what I teach to other people, but what my personal preferences are as well. And I'm really highly aware of its effects on mental health, its effects on our connections with other people. And although I love social media, I often default to ways of promoting my own business and the people that I work with in ways that are more sustainable. Or you used a word, and I'm not thinking of it at this exact moment, but it feels like a little bit more introverted, a little bit more like it'll take care of you if you can walk away. And that's that power of search. And that is what Pinterest is. Pinterest is a visual search engine. Although I'm very out there and active online, it's by choice when I want to be. And oftentimes you'll see that I just quietly disappear and my marketing, like marketing on Pinterest, Google, YouTube, these are the things that take care of me when I want to step away from my own business.
I thought that was actually genius. I think you posted a whole bunch of things at the beginning of the summer where you had already scheduled everything so that you could really walk away, enjoy the summertime with the kids,
That's
go to your
right.
cottage and all of that stuff. And then it wouldn't even really appear that you'd stepped away at all. And I thought
Yeah.
that was genius because so many businesses, especially when you're a solopreneur, like my husband is a renovation contractor,
Mm,
if he's not working on the business or chatting with people, like laying it on a pipeline, basically, like he
sure.
doesn't work. And of course,
Yeah.
he won't take any of my advice or YouTube
No, no, no.
videos or anything like that. But But I think that approach to business is genius. And another thing that I noticed you wrote one time was you could be much busier if you really wanted to. Like Pinterest has
Yeah.
actually hired you or come to you,
Yes.
tried to hire you in the past, but it's really doing the things that fuel you and are sufficient for you. All of the stuff that you could be doing to
Yes.
expand 10 times, but you don't
Sure.
necessarily want to.
Yeah, I've made very conscious choices to build a business. The term like business by design. I think that I've learned so much over my time and I'm not really built like other people. I do think differently. I'm also want to make it clear some of it is not by choice. I am a highly ambitious person, always have been. I'm in a competition with myself. I'm not in a competition with other people. It's a gift and a curse that I kind of love figuring things out and I will quietly do it on my own, especially with I have amazing people around me, including my husband, who also doesn't want to take advice from me on anything to do with marketing or messaging or website stuff. And that is just the nature of the beast. I think sometimes when you love somebody and you're in a close relationship, it doesn't always mean that you're compatible for work. But I really began developing my business in a more serious sense. Like I really saw the potential and I love the work I did before. I was working at the largest school board in North America. I found my work incredibly fulfilling. I loved it. I gave it my all. I was one of the top team members on my team in terms of my how many children I was able to work with, how many the schools I was working in. It was highly fulfilling. And it compensated well, but it was very traditional. I also had great perks, summers off. Like that's what people would love. But there was always this like thing where I almost got punished for working too hard. It was like reminded on a regular basis. Oh, Meagan, you're doing too many assessments. Oh, hey, slow down. You're making us look bad. And it's just who I am. Like, I love working. And I think when I started realizing as a side hustle that I could control my work, I could make extra money while helping people in a different way, it was really powerful. And then I decided, my husband and my partner and I decided to start a family. And that is when the bomb went off in my life. I never thought I was a control freak. I am absolutely used to controlling my outcomes and making choices. And then I had this beautiful child who was just the opposite of everything I had thought I knew about. My husband and I were those people that folks would say, you're going to make such great parents. You guys are such good parents. We were babysitters. We were caregivers. We both worked in the world of disabilities. And so are naturally very caring, enriching individuals. And then we had our own child who just cried all day. So I
Mm.
figured out in the trenches that there was no way I could go back to my job when I had this thing that was sucking the life out of me. And so I learned really quickly that I wanted to start my own business almost out of desperation. And that desperation in the first year, being on maternity leave, allowed me to safely start this business that I had control of. And since that time, I've welcomed a second child who wasn't quite as hard as the first, but she definitely, in a very different way, my business has been created around my kids and around not just my kids, but around my family unit, the way that we want to live our life. And we're very privileged in that way, my husband and I. So he stopped working a traditional job so that he could care for our children so I could grow our business. We foster dogs. We love dogs. We love being camping and being in the outdoors. And so we built this beautiful little life that was like supporting the parents we wanted to be. Also, we have a life that is really fun and lets us be who we want to be right now. So, who our kids need us to be, which is very hands on, we have kids that don't want to be put down, and that's who they are today. It won't be who they are in the future. But because of that reason, I've really shaped my business around them. And that's so your example of what I've done in the summer. It's really important to me that that we get to spend a lot of time together, not just in the summer, but the summer is Canada. Canadian, we live for our summers. We love being outdoors. We are outside all day. We're swimming, we're hiking, we're walking the dogs, we're doing things together. And so this business lets us do those things. And it's been very conscious the way that
Yeah,
I've done it. Yeah.
that's great. And honestly, I gotta say that's how I got into the work that I do now too, is
Mm,
because I was an only child. My parents were older and we just didn't have support and I was working in
mhm.
Toronto. So that's how I started pushing and advocating for hybrid remote because I was seeing my kids 1 hour a day. And that's not
Yeah.
what I wanted
No.
my family life to be, right? So I would say that I crafted it the same way. And I got to tell you that my oldest has learning disabilities. And that's another thing. I think that's actually how you caught my attention initially was you started
Mm.
talking about your work with doing psychological assessments
Mhm.
because we've had to go through that with my daughter. She has anxiety too. So we just went into university and had to do that
Yeah, big
process of university.
transition.
But having that support since like grade 2 made a huge difference for her, right?
Amazing.
And it was incredible work, and we're very lucky that there are people doing that, but I can totally understand why that can also be frustrating because I've run into that as well too. Incredible staff, but some of the policies and procedures that limit the work is just
Yeah, well, and there's
short-sighted.
all those extra things that you don't realize could take a toll, whether it's
Yeah,
commuting, whether it's being put in situations where you have to prioritize. I can't make it to something that is really important to my kids because I have an important meeting. And it's choices that people make every single day. And sometimes people have to make those choices. And it is a privilege to be able to make those choices. But really being able to work for yourself or even work remotely gives you more control over your day.
yeah,
I've always been one of these people that I work very quickly, very efficiently, and I have felt very throttled and punished by traditional settings. And actually, that's why when I worked at the school board, it was such a wonderful, if I had to work in a formal 9 to 5 setting, it was a really great setting for me because I was like a lone wolf. I could travel around to the schools. I got to choose my days. What days am I in meetings? What days am I with kids? What days am I crawling around on a kindergarten floor, like working with some kids with a teacher who's struggling with particular thing, and so it allowed me to constantly switch as I needed to, whereas I think a lot of office settings, there's really just not that we know we're sitting there a lot, we're not necessarily as effective as we could be, whereas I'm very intrinsically motivated, so
yeah,
I get a lot done when I can control my environment, how I work, and that non-traditional setting. I didn't realize I was, like, hardwired to become an entrepreneur. I didn't have parents who were entrepreneurs. I don't know any I know a few people that had their own businesses, but it was never something I was like, "I wanna be that person. I
yeah,
wanna" I it was, like, almost by accident, and I'm just very good at it because of maybe who I am as a person and how I
yeah.
learn and how I take action, and it's exciting, right? Because you put in as much as you want, maybe what your life, whether you're a caregiver or you have children that need you more or and that you don't have to make those choices. I think that for me emotionally, I'm very empathetic and I want to have full control of those aspects so that if people need me, my mother-in-law or we had family members getting surgery and it was like not even a question. Oh, yeah, my partner, he can like drive everybody to their appointments, pick them up, take them down, and it was like and nobody else could because everyone else had jobs and they could only take off a
Right.
certain amount of time. Whereas for us, it's, oh yeah, of course we can. We'll just shift around the school drop off. That's the only thing we have to
Yeah,
worry
and you
about.
don't have to ask anybody's permission, right?
Yes.
It's really just you can adjust the throttle as much as you want, and that is a benefit, and that's actually how we started too. My husband started his business in
Mm.
2008, and then I didn't start until I got laid off in 2020.
Sometimes like those good things come out of difficult time periods, right? Where you think
Mhm.
like, what am I going to do? What does this look like for me going forward? Just the same way that I wasn't equipped for knowing what to do when I was, like, being a mom
Right.
for the first year or 2. I knew, but I didn't know until I was in it,
Oh,
and we all know, right?
you
Like,
never know
you
until you're in
you
it.
can read every baby book, you
Yeah,
can be that person, like, I was the baby whisperer to everyone else's children but my own.
yeah,
And I'll never forget that when my husband was employed full time until our son was about 7 months old, and then we made that decision on a camping trip in a tent in Algonquin Park where we saw that we forecasted, like, the business could and actually it was came out of Kieran cried for 3 days straight. I owed
right.
everybody in that campground a bottle of wine. It was like nobody was sleeping. It was
Yeah,
awful. And we were campers, and we wanted to bring our son camping. He did not wanna camp, he hated it. So, we sat there and I said, "What would it take for us for you to be home? Because I just can't work if I'm this tired." And so he gave his notice and he came home. And I remember it was like the second week. And he just looked at me. And this was like a very involved partner. He did everything and anything that he could to help us, but he hadn't been home with us since the very beginning. When Kieran first came home when he was born, and he said to me, "How do you do this? Nothing stops him from crying." And I was
Mm.
like, "Did you think that I just wasn't doing something? Like when I told you," he was like, "But he's not hungry. He's not wet. He's not like they're like." We would go through all the
Yeah.
medically possible reasons of why we had a miserable child. And he was like, nothing's helping. And I'm like, I know. And now you're living by reality. And it was so like beautiful to have somebody, and I hated it because it's almost like trauma bonding. Like we
Right.
joke about the fact that we're trauma bonded by having these like beautiful children who cry a lot and that are very sensitive. But it was such a relief to know that I wasn't alone, or that it wasn't because of something I was missing. I read every book. I was the person that people, even to this day, people are like, "Here, hold my baby. My baby doesn't like other people." "Oh my gosh, she loves you." I'm like, "Eh." But my own kids know.
It's just preparation really for teenage years.
Oh, I joke about it all the time that if I thought surviving infancy was going to be difficult, the teenage years are going to be interesting. I will be a
I gotta
different
tell you,
person by
I
then.
do love there's a lot of jokes about teenagers, but I love
Mm.
my teenagers. I do. Every so often they get opinionated. I fell down the stairs last week and broke my or well, I've bruised my foot
Oh, ouch.
hobbling around. And so my daughter is not really thrilled about having to take the dog for a walk. And I'm mad about that because I'm like, seriously, I do all of the dog walk. Like,
Yeah.
I think that if I'm in this much pain, you could step up, and she
Yeah.
did not
Once.
necessarily share that opinion. I'm like, "Oh, yeah."
The
So,
thing I always like to say for my psych days, their frontal lobe is not fully developed.
I know, I
Not
try to keep that in
You
mind,
just
like,
don't totally realize what they're saying and how selfish it is, and then they start to realize. Eventually, we all get there. That is what I know from all my neuropsychology that I used to do. For any idea that we have about people, they will eventually get there. Some just take longer to get there than others.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I remember looking at her this weekend going, "Keep your mouth shut." It will be a gift if you could just keep your
Yes,
mouth shut
with love, with
with
love.
love. No. I was telling myself
Oh,
I wasn't telling my daughter. It's like
well, yourself
it's
with
just
love as
really how
well.
it works. Like, this is emotional regulation. We are just
Right.
practicing.
It's all just a big practice.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah, no, that's fascinating. I feel that parenting really prepares you for an awful lot. And I think that people who dismiss like leadership lessons that you get from
Uh,
parenting are they're they have no idea.
yeah,
They
they
shouldn't
just
dismiss
don't.
that
Well,
because
you don't know what you don't know. I think some
yeah,
people it's just due to lack of experience. I even see that in business, right? So if you haven't really seen the power, like again, before we started recording, you were talking about a Pinterest pin that continues to
yeah,
drive engagement and growth, and you're mystified by it all. But if you haven't seen that, you just don't even know it's possible.
yeah.
I think that I've been online so long and worked with so many different types of businesses, from multi-million dollar a year companies down to solopreneurs struggling to make their first bit of money to drive their life. And I've seen it all, and you start to see patterns. I think that's something I'm just really good at, recognizing
Mm,
patterns. And yeah, that sometimes like people will say really like nasty things online. "You're dumb if you're not doing this thing in your online business." And people just don't know. We all started a different baseline, actually, probably like working in psychology and understanding that everyone's baseline is different. Every business is unique. Every person that they bring, and sometimes like others just need what's a different way to the same end result, the way that they do it. And some execute very quickly, some need longer. You need to see things yourself to understand the potential that is there. And search engines, like whether you're using Google to drive traffic, or YouTube, or Pinterest, or even now more people talk about TikTok, is that I think with search, you have to be patient. It's not overnight results. And it's really hard because a lot of social media has conditioned us that things should happen quick. If you put in the
Right.
work, it's going to happen quick. And that's just not how things happen, especially with marketing. There's so many factors. And it can look really simple when you first start. You think about a few accounts that that you like them and you like their marketing and you think, well, I'm just going to do that. And then you realize that's not how it works.
Yeah. My husband actually is more of a Pinterest person than I am. And it's quite funny because you start to realize the power when you do things accidentally. I used his account to look up haircuts because I have a media interview and I have to do a photo shoot and all this stuff. So I was
Sure.
looking at various haircuts, right? And my husband is as bald can be. And he's like, why am I getting haircuts for women over 50?
Yeah.
Like, you were using my account, weren't you?
Yeah, you
Oh,
got thrown under the bus. Your search history is coming back to haunt you. Yeah, and that can happen, right? Like
yeah.
Pinterest tries to predict us. So if you look up things, this is one of the cool things about Pinterest is it has predictive modeling. So
Yeah.
say if you got a puppy and you looked up training for puppies on Pinterest,
Yeah.
it would predict down the road to show you like how to manage teenage dog behavior, what to do with your adult dog. Like it will attempt to predict. So even if you start looking up branding photo shoots, it would show you outfits, it would show you makeup, it will show you like quotes to help get in the right headspace.
Right.
And that's one of the cool things about predictive modeling. And that's the use of AI, right? You mentioned
Right.
AI earlier, and we don't
Yeah.
even realize that we've been engaging with AI for years and have
Yes.
benefited from it. Some of it good, some of it bad. I think I see both sides of things. I'm cautiously optimistic. I do know it can be used for lots of not such nice, very unsavory things, but I like to look at the ways, especially myself. I have a million ideas. I need help with execution. I need help with um, friction points, and
Mm.
AI has really helped me myself. And I think when used right and when you understand what you want it to do, it can be very powerful.
So are you training GPTs on your
Mhm.
existing material?
I am, but
Yeah.
I'm doing it very carefully. I think that I think you jokingly said earlier that not the word jaded, but that like when you've
Cynical.
been on sorry?
Cynical.
Cynical. I think that yeah, that's a great word. So I think one, it's my background having an Irish family. You tend to be a bit cynical. You tend to be a bit like I think I'm also just somebody that I'm very real to a point that sometimes people don't like it. If you ask me my opinion, I will be honest, and people don't aren't always ready for that. I joke that I am the friend that when you need to move, break up, get confirmation that you should break up with somebody, or I'm the person they come to. They don't come to me when they aren't sure if they want to break up with that person, but once they know, I will say, I don't think they're good for you. When I can't, I, but how does that relate to what I do? When it comes to AI, I'm not afraid of it. I know a lot of people are very worried about how it can be used. I tend to think, though, I actually heard the great launch master Jeff Walker say this during his launch recently, is it's not going anywhere. And really, as business owners and entrepreneurs, we need to get out ahead of it. So if you keep your head in the sand, and I thought this very early, that when it started to trickle and become very accessible and commonplace for us to use it, I was a little bit apprehensive. I didn't really want to get into it, but I started to see very quickly that if I didn't get out ahead of it, it was somebody else was going to, and it could take twists and turns that I just I wanted to be in control of it. And
Mhm.
so I started educating myself, my husband as well. He works for on my team with me. We both started looking at ways that were ethical to use it, how to control it. Even with my father-in-law who worked at IBM for 45 years, we talked a lot about even when he was at IBM, he's retired now. And he said like they used AI then, just how they described it was different. But we talked a lot about knowing what you want it to do, being in control of it, being the guide, being the expert. And so the way that I look at it is how can I be a leader to those that are interested in the way that I think and teach, also acknowledging that there's a lot of gray zone,
Mhm.
legislation, laws, etc. I think
Yeah.
there's also, as a Canadian, I see things so differently. I think privately, I had an American say to me, like, that I shouldn't be teaching how to use ChatGPT. I'll tell you. So they thought it's dangerous, it's going to take jobs away. And I should wait for US lawmakers to make decisions about it before I taught it and I feel sorry for that person. They have since changed their positioning. They never apologized to me. They were I tried to come to the conversation with a very open mind, but they said that it was dangerous and that I was being unethical and it was harmful as a thought leader in the space. And I said, well, actually, I think it's the opposite. I think that we have to teach how to use it ethically, what parameters, what it can do, what we should be using it for, what we shouldn't be using it for, and how to. I'm not going to approach this with rose tinted glasses, but let's also be real.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm not going to be left behind. And I'm telling you all that because I am training GPTs to help my students and clients and people in my audience to remove friction from the process of getting active on Pinterest. But I
Yeah.
do that through the lens of also not trusting AI.
Yep.
I'm very lucky in that I'm married to a developer. And I said, I'm really excited about some of these things, these features, these methods that people, other course creators, other educators, how they're using GPTs in their business. But what I worry about is I don't want to feed all of my intellectual IP into a GPT that is publicly available. And then I have no control over what happens to it in the future
Right.
while things are advancing at a pace that we just don't know. We don't know where. And I don't think ChatGPT will never be me. I know it won't, but I want to do things under parameters that I have control. The ways that we were looking at it is how could we embed and help people have access to me and my knowledge and my sort of the way that I do things, the things that come very easily to me but still have full control over it. So we've developed a special app that helps you do that and control access and allows me to update it and help people. So that's one of the ways that we're using GPTs and AI in terms of how we deliver education and not necessarily strategy, but identifying the friction points where people get stuck, where they get overwhelmed and when they don't move forward and when they're learning how to use Pinterest for their business. So I'll teach the what and the why and the how, and then my assistants help people move forward so they don't get stuck at that particular point in their journey.
And you're restricting it through your community because you have a private community, right?
Yeah, so I have different programs. I have Evergreen and then some reoccurring, like a reoccurring revenue, like reoccurring program, like in the sense that it's a membership. And then I have some courses. One of the things that I worried about is if you create something, the way that GPTs are designed, if you make them publicly available or even if you make them private, but people can access them with a link is once they have access to it, you can't take away access. I also worry that sometimes people share information. If I share a prompt, actually, this was a
Mm.
real eye opener. So I have Pinterest prompts that I share with people through as a freebie.
Hmm.
And I asked people for their honest feedback. Are you using them? Do they help you? And I had 3 different people say to me, oh my gosh, I got these from you a year ago, copy and pasted them into my own chat GPT, and I forgot that they were from you. I use them every day, and I had no recollection that you were the person they came from. And I was like, wait a sec. This is interesting because with the excitement prompts and sharing our knowledge, and I was giving these expert written prompts, but people were forgetting they came from me. And then there's this disconnect with my branding. And it's actually why, much to the annoyance of many of our students, that even if you buy something from me that's $7, we have people log into our website. We create a custom login because once you buy one thing from me, I assume that you will love it. Other things that I'm creating. And so you're going to need an account anyways. And 2, it's a way that we protect our IP and we brand things. I find that I buy products from people and I'm just given a link to download it. I don't remember who it came from. Um, I don't become a repeat customer because they don't ever email me again. There's all these like points where it's just not a very good customer experience.
Mm.
And so actually I had my own wake up call where I was like, wait a sec, I'm sharing this amazing information that's helping people and they forgot they got it from me. So that's where GPTs can be really helpful and help people and help them move forward in the thing that you're really good at. But I wanted to do it with parameters that allow me to continue to control it, update it. And if someone joins my membership and then leaves, they were paying for access to my tools. So I don't really want them to continue to have access. Whereas a course, it's different, right? If someone buys a
Right.
course from you and it's they have access to it for as long as they exist, that's different. but I wanted to have more control of it. And that's what we looked at developing.
Yeah, the intellectual property aspect of it is really fascinating for many different areas.
Mm,
That's
right.
it's an opportunity and a challenge, right?
Yeah, it is. And I think that's just it. That everyone also too comes at it from different perspectives. I think that there are many things that are happening in the AI world that are worrying, but I also think it's going to happen anyways. And so it's like I said, I'd rather be out in front of it, see how it can help me. I see how it helps myself, so I know it can help other people. But we also need to understand its restrictions and things that we shouldn't be using it for and be careful. Like we make choices. It's no different than people who go onto Pinterest, download images, and think they can use them as their own. Like these types of things
Yeah.
have been happening for years. So I think that when people have concerns about using AI, you just have to know what you're doing and be in control of it. And also, it's a process of consent. So if you're giving it information, you just need to know how that information could be used in the future.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense. So we're almost at time. Did you want to talk a little bit about your challenge and why people might want to show up to
Sure.
that?
Yeah. So I figured out very early on in my business that I love teaching and I love teaching live. So in early 2020, I started running a free Pinterest challenge. So it was a way for me to deliver high quality live training that kind of allowed me to tap into some of the things that I think are my superpowers, which is actually providing very real time, custom, supportive coaching and advice. And so the challenge came out of that I was like, how can I be myself, really help people, but also allow them to learn with me and get results. And so I started running this 5-day challenge. I've since evolved it to just calling it, sometimes it's 4 days, sometimes it's 5 days, it's been 6 days. But what we do is in a very short amount of time, I will teach you everything you need to know to grow your audience. I do say double your audience in most cases. If you do exactly what I say, you will at a bare minimum grow your audience. But it's fast and furious. It's so much fun. It's my 12th time running it. So I've been running it several times a year since 2020. And it's going to be our biggest and best one yet. I have a bunch of like surprises and new little things that I'm testing out and doing, ways for people to really get access to some of my resources that I normally keep in my programs, but also adjust it. So we have every type of business owner. We have people who are beginners to Pinterest. We have people who have literally are heads of marketing at
Mm,
massive companies take the
mhm.
challenge. So we have a diverse audience. And so I started realizing, how can I segment this and how can I make it really valuable? So we offer a coaching and a Q&A session. I offer my core teachings, which are always updated because everything's done live. And it's really fun. We allow replays for the week and then we do take them down. But I'm going to be running my challenge kicking off on Monday, September 23rd. There's no charge, it's completely free. I got asked this on one of my images yesterday or something I'm promoting. They were like, are you going to sell a course at the end? And the way that I look at it is I have created the challenge so that you can we have people who've taken, I'm not even joking. We found somebody who has taken at the time. So now I'm about to start my 12th. We have somebody who has taken 10 out of my 11, at the time, 11 challenges.
Wow.
And that is because every single time, because it's done live, I teach something new. I have new things that I share. And there is no obligation. At the end, obviously, I have a cool opportunity that people want to keep learning with me, they can. But if you just take my challenge, watch the training, and do what I say, you will get results. And actually, I find that people really love coming into my world after they've done a challenge or two because they start to see if Pinterest has potential for them. And I'd much rather people come to me. I'm not here to convince people that they should be using Pinterest for their business. But if you've already had a taste of some of the things that Pinterest can do for you as a business owner, it's just a great way to have that accountability, work quickly. It's like a sprint, right? It reinvigorates you. And I know that September is a really wonderful time to head full steam into our new marketing plans and really set us up for 2025 is really what we're looking at.
Yeah, I saw a metaphor they used the other day. It was like planting seeds to harvest later.
Yeah. And that's like the oldest
Yeah.
example in the book, but it really is so incredibly true. And I think that those people who garden and have a yard, they know And it's like my butterfly bush that I planted 2 years, it was beautiful this summer, but the first year, I wasn't even sure if it was gonna live.
Yeah.
And I think that we have to be patient. Any search platform like Pinterest takes time, but I do know I do have tricks and strategies up my sleeve to help people get quick results, and that's what I know. I know that when it comes to marketing, we want quick wins, but investing now is really the type of thing that will bring you weeks and months and years of benefit. And so the right people who want to keep learning with me, and whether it's in the free sense or coming into my programs, I give away, you said, I give away a ton, and I do that on purpose. And I really don't think you can ever teach too much for free. I know there's people that would say, "Oh no, that's not true. You're hurting your business." I really just don't think I don't think I am at all. I know
Well,
I've been doing this so long.
you're triggering the gift of reciprocity, right? So I want to tell you how I've used the advice that you've given out for free on Threads so far. So I created a podcast episode. It was actually about using garden as a metaphor for organizational design, whether
Yeah.
hybrid remote is really process policy or organizational design. So I then put that whole transcript into AI and asked it to summarize like captions that I could
Love
use.
it.
Pinterest.
Yeah.
I created I just actually took a short little video of my roses in the garden and did like a voiceover. So I have a Pinterest pin
Love it.
that I can use because I know from my personal branding experience that the video pins do get more attention
Yeah,
than anything
they
else.
do.
And then once I actually publish that episode, then I can put that in and that's going to be my first.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's
So that's
beautiful.
like drawing actually everything that you really just said in this and putting
Yeah.
it together. And that's actually why I wanted to give you the opportunity to come on the podcast because I do find that you're so generous in what you're teaching that
Thank you.
you would actually ask, or you would put out a thing on Threads basically
Mm.
asking for like people who wanted to have people on the podcast. So I'm like, oh, okay, this is an opportunity for me to give something back to you. So,
Oh, I
thank you.
appreciate that, Nella. That's really sweet of you. And really sweet that sometimes it feels like we're like putting things out into the world and we don't always hear back. So it is so nice to hear. Like what's the phrase? Like you were picking up what I was putting down. Do you think and it accumulates? And that's what I always say to people too. Like
Yeah.
just follow me on Threads or follow me on TikTok. My dog is trying to tell me that she wants to say hello here.
That's okay.
Of
I love
course.
dogs.
Yeah, of course. She's reached the end of her rope there. But I do think that you don't have to. Some of the best things to do is to take action on what and start to see if it's fruitful for you and
Yeah.
it benefits you as a business owner because we're not all made the same and we just naturally gravitate towards certain platforms, certain content creation, the fact that you have a podcast. That's your one of your chosen methods. And I've thought about that for years. I love podcasts. I don't have my own. Not yet. I find creating short form video was very painful for me for years, but now I love it. And we all change, we adapt, we figure out what we like to do. I love Threads. I'm obsessed with Threads, admittedly. It's my favorite. It's just been a great place for me personally, but I know
Yeah.
that other people are like, no, not for me. And that's okay.
I prefer writing. My challenge with platforms like TikTok and YouTube and Instagram really is the visuals because I am not a visual
Mm.
thinker. But I did actually
Yeah.
try that in AI too. So after I put in a transcript, I'm like, what visuals can I use to create pins? And it gave me all kinds of suggestions. And I'm like, well, I wouldn't have
Yeah.
thought of
Well, there
that,
you
right?
go. So it's helping you with a friction point of something
Yeah,
that so
exactly.
I always funny because I started blogging at a time when it was really about the words. It was
Yeah,
really about your writing. And I too, I struggle because I feel like I know what looks good. I consume a lot of video,
yeah.
I consume a lot of images, but I'm not a graphic designer. I'm not a natural videographer. And but I had to continue to grow my audience and evolve with social media. I just had to be like, oh, it's okay. I can outsource my graphic design. I'm going to create video. Sometimes people criticize me. I actually had somebody on one of my TikToks say, could you do shorter edits? Could you get better at editing? It's a little bit choppy. And I was just like, it doesn't change the information that I'm sharing. And if you want to edit my video, actually, I think I responded, if you're offering to edit my videos for free, I'd love to have you because I'm not going to let that stop me. But it's true. Like I'm similar where I feel like I've never been video is not like some people are just gifted videographers or they're very good at editing. Definitely on my hit list to get better at editing and no. We all have things that we're working on and I think yeah. I also have things that I need to continue to improve upon.
Yeah. And that's actually why I liked AI because I'm like, okay, I can take content that already have like in my camera roll and then what can I do with
Yeah.
that? And I'm like,
Love
oh, I
it.
never thought about that. So it's stuff that I'm already creating, but then giving me a different perspective that I don't necessarily have available to me because I don't have a team, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and valuable good content is valuable good content.
Yeah.
I think that doesn't change. So you have knowledge, you have
Yeah.
information you can share with people. And like you were joking earlier, like it's just a 20-second video of me talking about branding, but that's really helpful. That's 20 seconds.
That wasn't even me talking. It was just a picture
Or
of my orchid.
there you go. But there you go. But it's there's all these different, you just have to think of who are you helping? Who are you able to help them learn something to you that is very easy and default information? And of course, everyone knows that. No, not everyone does. Actually, I'll be talking about it in the challenge. These are one of the things we talk about, but I'm so glad that you decided to join. No,
Yeah.
it's funny because I do the challenge. I don't know anyone. So always when friends or online acquaintances join, it's always funny. Or even last time I had somebody who I've used as an example, who's
Yeah.
amazing at Pinterest, and she joined my challenge, and I was like, "Feels like we have a Pinterest celebrity here."
That's
Yeah.
good. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. We have a lot of fun. It's very real. It's very funny. There's usually some silly flub that happens. My dog shows up, or I forget to turn on my mic. It's a good time.
Yeah. 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 My daughter has walked in while I'm recording and then she's, which way is the camera facing? I'm like, why are you in a towel?
Yeah, yeah.
When recording, what are you doing? The camera was facing the opposite way. It was fine, but it's always entertaining when you're recording from home. I'm actually really excited. My local library is supposed to be opening up a podcast studio. It's been 6 months.
Oh, that's
I know. In Keswick, no less.
yeah.
And it was supposed to open in March. And I don't know, they had hiring issues, they had equipment issues. And so
Sure.
finally it's supposed to be opening. I'm booked for Wednesday.
I
I
love
was trying to
it.
see. I'm like, can we
Cool.
do this? But yeah, no, on Wednesday I get to go. And he's like,
Let me know. That's amazing. I'd
yeah,
like
they're
to
like,
see
we
a
have to teach you.
trailer.
I'm like, I've got 85 episodes. I don't need you to
Yeah.
teach me how to.
You're like, "I'm good. I don't need a
I
crash
really just need
course."
access to this.
Yeah. I would love to have a little thing like that I could go to.
I know.
Getting
Yeah.
sick of being at home. I love my house. I love being able to make tea and coffee and hang out and jump in the backyard with the dogs, but I think I might start doing a little bit of co-working, although then I get annoyed when people are too loud in the
Yeah. And I honestly, up here, we just don't have
Yeah, you just don't
anything
have
like
it.
that. So
Yeah,
like you either go
sure.
to Tim Hortons or
Yeah,
it's nowhere. I guess you could go to a pizza
that
shop.
feels very Canadian,
Oh
right? And
yeah.
even then, it's like the hub of the town, so you don't wanna be there either.
No. Yeah, exactly. And forget about anything confidential. I laugh at
Yeah.
them. People that are like, oh, you can totally do this in a coffee shop. And I'm like, only if you want like the entire town to know in 5 minutes.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's small town life. Only small town people know that. Nothing is private in a small town. I'll never forget one time I walked my dog and somebody like it got back before I in Northern Ireland in a small town. It got
Yeah.
back to my mother-in-law before I got back from the walk. She was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, you walked by such and such today." And I was like, "How did you know that?" She's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, so and so called me to tell
Yeah,
me
I
they
mean, who
saw
needs
you."
social media in a small town? You just really need somebody who went to school with somebody's brother and somebody's
Yeah.
uncle, and everybody knows everything that happened anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why we have such well-developed senses of how information spreads on social media.
Yeah, just spend 1 year in a small town and you'll know or the broken telephone that can occur, right?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. I moved to a small town when I was like my parents split up, so when I was like 9, and my mom was a divorced woman moving to a small
Ooh.
town with her 3 children, so you
Yeah.
can only imagine. Yeah, we were outsiders for the 15 years. We were city people, the 15 years that we lived there. It's
Oh, yeah.
so funny to me, right? Or even the things like weird conceptions that people had about us. We were just weird city people, freaky. We homeschooled for a while, so that was really weird. Even our dog was weird. They will find I remember my best friend moved to a small town and they got given this old Volvo by her
Yeah,
partner's grandparents. Like they were upgrading and they said, "Do you guys want our old Volvo?" So they
right.
got this Volvo, they moved to this small town, and this very old Volvo had little windshield wipers on the lights.
Yeah.
This car
Oh,
was
yeah,
like
yeah.
20 years old. And a kid from the town came to their house, and he was like one of those kids that talks to everybody. He's like, "So you're the new people with the fancy car." And they were like, "What?" They're like looking at this old, loved, very about to break down Volvo with a million gazillion kilometers on it. I just threw myself being Canadian by saying kilometers, miles. And they were like, "What are you talking about?" He's, "Oh, everybody's talking about you with your fan." Oh, and they had a retired Greyhound. So they were stuck out because they had this fancy city Greyhound because nobody in the country has Greyhounds.
Right.
And they had this Volvo that had wipers on the lights. And so he told them, "Oh, everybody's talking about you. They
Yeah.
saw your car at the grocery store and it
Yeah.
has little wipers on the light." They could not stop laughing. She was like, "Is that what we're going to be known for? We're going to be known for these like little wipers that don't even work and our Greyhound dog, our retired racing dog that we got from a rescue." And she said, we're witches. That's what they're
Yeah.
showing.
Oh, I can when I grew up, like I had a streak of white and my hair started turning
Mhm.
white when I was 7, right? And so I was always the kid with the white hair. Like,
Oh,
and every single person knew who that was.
yeah, you have a superpower then. That's like a secret
And
superpower,
okay,
right?
there's a kid's book and it exists and I told my story in it and the author's kids, I'm their favorite character in the story.
I
So yeah,
love it.
I have different colored eyes and
Yeah.
hair. Yeah.
Look at
So
that. You were just
when I was a kid though, people thought I was a witch because Wardenburg syndrome also has different pigmentation differences, right?
sure.
When we started learning about like the witches of Salem and all that stuff,
They
they
were
went into
like,
the stake. I'm
"Nola."
like,
You're like,
hey,
"Yep,
I'm like
that's
prime
me.
candidate.
That's me." If I was alive in that time period, right? That's what, yeah, like there's so many of these things, right? That
Yeah.
people are like, yeah. Thankfully, you weren't born in those times and you're alive now.
Oh, yeah, I know. And now I miss my streak. My daughter has a streak, and I'm
Uh,
jealous that she has the streak.
so we have freckles because my mom
Yep.
is Irish and my son has now fully grown into his freckles. And at the beginning of the summer, he said, "Mommy, I don't like my freckles because they make me different." And I
Mm,
said, "Look at my face." And he said, "Yours, I like yours." And I said, "Why don't you like your own?" And I just don't know if I want to look different than other people. And that made me a little bit sad. But we had this big long conversation and my well now 3-year-old was listening and she wants freckles. And I said, "It's our
mm.
special thing that makes us different. Like our
Yeah.
freckles, and people would love to have freckles." And anyways, it was a very
People fake
interesting.
freckles these days
Yes. And
with
there's like,
broccoli.
I know people, and there's even at Sephora, there's like freckle
Yeah,
makeup. And I remember I was a year ago, I went into Sephora and I saw the freckle makeup and I was like, wow, I
I know.
wish, yeah, as a kid, I got made fun of and people thought I was weird.
Oh,
And now seeing my kid have them and they're so cute on him. And I don't know. And I'm like, "No, they're great." And now my daughter wants them. She only
yeah.
has two. It all starts to like when you're
Yeah, yeah,
little
yeah. Yeah,
because of sun exposure.
yeah.
She only has a few, but she's talking about how she already wants them. And anyways, yeah.
I think it's actually really interesting because I've told people for years that white hair goes in and out of trend because
Yeah.
these days people are all they're ditching the dye and getting out of it. But I don't fit in with those people because I never dyed.
Yeah.
But you see it in like superhero movies like Storm and X-Men. And
Yes.
so it's always been associated with either superpowers or evil. And it
Interesting.
switches. It goes in
Yeah. Depending on what's in or out.
yeah. And that's actually what I wanted to ask you. Just one more question, then we'll wrap it up. So the Pinterest trends, they just released the 2024 trends.
Yeah.
What's your take on that? Do they tend to be accurate or?
So they're based on numbers.
Yeah.
And yes, they have a 80% accuracy rate typically. Out of what they predict, 80% will come true.
And do you find that true?
Yes and no. I think they tend to be like a lot of them are up and coming. I
Yeah.
feel like they want something to differentiate and to make themselves be a little bit more quirky and cutting edge. I don't. I think the superpower for most people using Pinterest for driving traffic is actually in evergreen
Yeah.
content, but also seasonal content that trends. That's where we see a lot of growth and website power. So things that are more flash in the pan are cool, but just from a long by default to sustainability and things that,
Yeah.
yes, is it nice to benefit from something that's going viral? but I wouldn't place a huge amount of effort in it. I think if your content and your products or services align with it, like there's been really cool mental health initiatives.
Yeah.
There's been some re-envisioning of ideas, and that could be quite empowering to align something you already talk about with this idea. For example, I saw in the fall, or pardon me, in the winter, they did this self-care and journaling. And so like my approach to that as a business owner was like, what does my journaling look like as an entrepreneur? Or what does my self-care look like as an entrepreneur? So
Yeah.
am I going to tap into the premise as is? Probably not, but you can do some nice adjustments in terms of thinking about content that you could create. But the Pinterest predicts tends to be a little bit wacky, but I do see in some niches or
Jellyfish?
industries.
Anyone?
Yeah, or metals or bows.
Actually, the metals I was looking at because it was weird because I was looking at my branding just to see if I was where I want it to be. And I was thinking I would want to do like liquid silver
Yes, that's a
metal
great
and like
idea.
letters and stuff. And I was just like, "Ooh, I'm on trend." And
Yeah,
it's
it
just
aligns
instant,
really
right?
nicely.
And
Yeah.
and also like I use hot pink and I was just like, "Is hot pink still out because Barbie is gone?" And they've got this whole tropical thing and I'm like, "Ooh, hot pink is still in because of the tropics." I'm like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
make it
Well, and
famous."
it is this, I think it's don't put too much stock in it, but it's like cool to look at because if it aligns, great. But if it does, if you're like, oh, none of my stuff is like hot this year, don't worry about it. That's what I think.
And this actually is an example of one because I found one, it was actually into relationships and it was the hot seat question. And I'm like, that
Oh,
is a good podcast thing. So you
yeah.
have the very first honor of being a hot seat question.
Yeah. But there you go, where you can align yourself like business hot seats.
Right.
So you can align what you are very good at and what you talk about with something that is picking up momentum on Pinterest. That is like
Yeah.
the perfect
And
content.
it had like it was like an increase of 800%. And I'm like, whoa,
Mm,
that one I'm going to use. So
that's it,
there you
right?
go.
I love it. I love that. I
So
love
I've
that. It
been
does.
totally paying attention to everything you're talking about.
Yeah, very. You're very observant.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much.